infrastructure bill approved. Where Congress goes from here. Vaccine mandates blocked. The Biden administration faces another setback. Travel restrictions lifted. What it means for people trying to come to the U.S. And Catholic protest. Why nuns and priests are standing along the streets in Sri Lanka. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, November 8th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The U.S. House of Representatives passed a long-delayed $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill Friday evening for improved roads, bridges, and internet connections. Republican votes helped to push the long-delayed package over the finish line. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
Democrats breathed a sigh of relief last Friday night after passing the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, bursting into applause.
On this vote, the yeas are 228 and the nays are 206. The motion is adopted.
Infighting between progressive and moderate Democrats held up the bill for months. Progressives say they got commitments on a larger bill that includes most of President Biden's economic agenda.
We made the determination that getting a commitment to this larger package, frankly, was absolutely important, that we wanted to make sure we had the votes for immigration, for pharmaceutical drug pricing, for paid leave.
The progressives got help passing the hard infrastructure bill. 13 Republicans pushed it over the finish line.
The hard infrastructure bill, I thought it was good for our district. I thought it was good for our country. I don't think it was a perfect bill. I rated it a B. I mean, if I was writing it, I think I would have made it a little better myself. But I think in the end it was good for the country, and I just got to follow my conscience.
Former President Donald Trump chastised Republicans, quote, very sad that the rhinos in the House and Senate gave Biden and Democrats a victory on the non-infrastructure bill, where only 11% of the money being wasted goes to real infrastructure. Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted out the names of who she calls traitors for caving in to President Biden's agenda. Congressman Rodney Davis and all other House GOP members wrote a letter to President Biden. Quote, we must address the global supply chain and ports crisis before Congress even considers additional social spending and taxation legislation. Our priority right now should be strengthening our nation's economy and increasing our global competitiveness. House Democrats hope to take up the nearly $2 trillion social spending bill by November 15th, assuming that they receive information from the Congressional Budget Office. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
President Joe Biden plans to sign the infrastructure bill when lawmakers return to D.C. so they can join the signing event. Meanwhile, the president and his top cabinet officials will be hitting the road to explain how the massive legislation will impact everyday Americans. White House correspondent Owen Jensen continues our team coverage tonight. Owen.
That's right, Tracy. President Biden not only has to sell what's already been passed, he has to repair his image among voters critical of the job he's been doing.
President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden return to the White House. The president's signature, all that's needed now to make his bipartisan infrastructure deal a done deal. The White House releasing this statement this morning, saying the newly passed legislation makes the largest investment in passenger rail since the creation of Amtrak. The deal will invest $66 billion to provide healthy, sustainable transportation options for millions of Americans by modernizing and expanding transit and rail networks across the country. In the daily White House press briefing, the Transportation Secretary was called in to get the word out.
And we're going to replace thousands of outdated buses with clean zero-emission vehicles and aging rail cars with state-of-the-art new ones.
The Biden administration has to sell it, essentially explaining to Americans what they just paid for.
And it's going to strengthen our supply chain by improving our ports, our airports, and our freight rail.
Meanwhile, kids in the U.S. ages 5 to 11 now eligible to get vaccinated against COVID-19. And launching a national campaign, the First Lady and Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy. They stopped at an elementary school in Virginia today trying to convince parents to get their children immunized.
So let's give a round of applause to all the brave kids here who got their shots.
Kids are safer from the disease than adults, but can still get infected. Since the coronavirus pandemic began, at least 94 children ages 5 to 11 have died from COVID-19.
There are about 28 million kids in this country age 5 to 11. The FDA says the shots are safe, but whether parents rush in to roll up their kids' sleeves, of course, remains to be seen. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
A federal appeals court issues a stay on the Biden administration's COVID-19 vaccine mandate, which was put in place for companies with 100 or more employees. More than 24 states have filed lawsuits against the rules that were laid out by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as OSHA, citing grave statutory and constitutional issues. And joining me now is Ken Cuccinelli, Senior Fellow for Immigration and Homeland Security at the Center for Renewing America and former Attorney General of Virginia. Ken, welcome back. Great to see you. The stay issued for the vaccine mandate, as we know, is only temporary, but it is being considered a victory by many. Can you talk to us more about that and exactly what the ruling means?
Sure. So the Fifth Circuit, one of the federal courts of appeals, stayed the private vaccine mandate. So if you think about three different mandates, there's one for federal employees. That's its own category. There's one for federal contractors. The federal government is achieving that by changing the contract provisions that they engage with these companies with. And then this third one is the biggest one of all. It's a mandate on all companies of 100 people or more to vaccinate all their employees. They're doing it by a regulation out of the Labor Department. And to say it's an ill fit is probably an understatement. So to get a temporary injunction, as the plaintiffs did here, one of the things they have to demonstrate to the court is that they are likely to win on the merits when the case is fully heard out. And I think that that's such a strong case. There's so little authority for the federal government to attempt to force these mandates that it wasn't a tough call for the court. But as you said, it is temporary. There will be another round where this will get revisited and the government will try to explain what their legal basis is for being able to order all these companies to do this. And but we'll see where it plays out. Presumably, ultimately, it'll go to the Supreme Court. Nonetheless, for now, it's a nationwide injunction.
Now, Ken, what exactly does that mean, grave statutory and constitutional concerns? Can you break that down for those who may not understand it?
Sure. So you've seen just in the COVID situation we've lived with almost 2 years now, states have taken the lead on making orders for their communities, whether it's you must wear a mask in a restaurant or a school or vaccinations. These are all traditionally what are called police powers. Don't mistake it for cops on the beat. Police powers are things like public health, zoning, local authorities. These have always been exercised by the state governments, and the Supreme Court has recognized their authority to do that as a sovereign state. The federal government has never been deemed to have any of this power. So here they are exercising what amounts to a traditional state police power under a labor safety regulation that really doesn't fit the situation very well and has never been used for anything like this. So the constitutional power grab by the federal government is taking this police power from the states. That's one. And two, the statutory problem they have is that the law that gives the Labor Department the authority to make regulations for workplace safety doesn't really cover this situation in the way the White House is trying to convince people it does. Of course, the court was not convinced, and so they imposed the injunction. I expect this regulation, I do not think is going to hold up. It's the weakest of the three categories that the federal government is attempting to force people through. And I don't think you're ever going to see this injunction come off because the government's going to lose this case.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for your time. So much more we could talk about, but we're running out of time. We appreciate your analysis.
Good to be with you.
Well, the United States reopened its borders today to fully vaccinate visitors from countries including Mexico and Canada and most of Europe. It ends a ban on foreign travelers that started more than a year ago. That's a welcome change for families separated by the pandemic and a sign of hope For the battered travel industry, many foreign leaders wanted the U.S. to end the travel ban much earlier. International travelers flying to the U.S. need proof of vaccination and a negative COVID-19 test. The U.S. condemns yesterday's assassination attempt against Iraq's Prime Minister. Mustafa al-Kadhimi suffered minor injuries from the drone attack at his residence. Afterward, he met with Iraq's president. In a statement, President Biden said, quote, "I am relieved the Prime Minister was not injured and commend the leadership that he has shown in calling for calm, visible security, and Baghdad's green zone is on alert for militias backed by Iran." Well, satellite imagery shows China has working replicas of U.S. Navy ships for possible target practice. The photos show an aircraft carrier and a destroyer on rail tracks at a base where China is known to test ballistic missiles. China denies the mock-ups. There are fears that China may be developing a weapon known as the carrier killer, which could potentially attack U.S. naval assets deployed to protect Taiwan and the South China Sea. A Polish defense minister says that there are more than 12,000 migrants gathered at the Belarus-Poland border. They are trying to cross into Poland, into the European Union, but Poland considers it a security risk. The bloc migrants are now trying to cut through the border fences. In Nicaragua, President Daniel Ortega is expected to win yesterday's election, which President Biden is calling rigged. A White House statement calls the vote, quote, pantomime election that was neither free nor fair and most certainly not democratic. Ortega is likely to win a fourth term. He will be reinforced by Sandinistas' control of parliament. Last June, police arrested 7 potential election challengers as treasonous. In Sri Lanka, a Catholic priest will not be arrested for his criticism of the government's investigation into the 2019 Easter bombings. The announcement came today after a prayer vigil by Catholic and Buddhist religious members outside of Sri Lanka's Supreme Court. Father Cyril Gamini Fernando is among other Catholic clergy who seek justice and accountability from the government 2 years after the multiple Easter bombings that claimed nearly 270 lives. At the Mexican border city of Juarez on Saturday, Bishop Jose Torres Campos celebrated a mass to remember more than 500 migrants who have died this year while trying to cross into the U.S. At El Paso, Texas, the shrine at El Punto marks where Pope Francis highlighted the plight of migrants during his 2016 papal visit. Coming up, Bishop William Wack shares his message to his flock, emphasizing the importance of spreading the good news and the need for evangelization. And caring for the community, how the church in San Francisco is reaching out to the homeless. Bishop William Wack from the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee in Florida is celebrating his 4th anniversary as bishop. In a new pastoral letter, he emphasized the need for evangelization, saying, "The longer I serve as a priest and bishop, the truth of this statement becomes more evident. The church exists to evangelize. Put simply, if we believe that Jesus Christ suffered and died for us and rose again to set us free from sin and death, we are compelled to share that good news with everyone around us." And joining us now is Bishop William Wack. Your Excellency, great to be with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Hello, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, our pleasure. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit more about your pastoral letter. You focus on evangelization. Why do you feel that's so important, especially in these times?
Especially now, we are so bogged down, it seems, with many important issues that need to be resolved, that need to be addressed. But we're so bogged down, like I said, that becomes our focus. And we have to remember that, you know, as Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI has said over and over again, that at the center of our faith is not a book or a set of issues or anything, or even the Bible. The center of our faith is a person, Jesus Christ. We have to get to know him. We have to make him known, loved, and served in the world.
And what do you think evangelization looks like now? You know, and how can we help to spread the word of God in our daily lives?
There are many ways to evangelize today, especially with social media, the fact that everyone's online. That's a great way just to spread hope and joy and the truth of the gospel. But also, I'm trying to help people to see that we do it in very small ways, very everyday ways. Maybe if you're with your spouse or a family in a restaurant, stop, pray before you eat, sign yourself. It's a very Catholic symbol, obviously, and sign, or wear a crucifix or a cross. And if someone engages you and says, oh, you're Christian, or tell me about that, then that's a perfect opportunity just to share your faith with someone else. I think we need to do that in very tangible ways today.
Yeah, that's a great tips right there. Can you talk about what you're doing in the Diocese of Pensacola and Tallahassee to share the Word of God? How are you all evangelizing there?
Well, we have many opportunities here in the diocese. Every diocese is unique. Here we have a lot of visitors, a lot of summer visitors, spring breakers. We have students come to Florida State or University of West Florida. We have a lot of military folks. And we have, I believe it's 40,000 inmates in our prisons and jails in Florida, up here in this part of Florida. So there's a lot of opportunities to evangelize. And one thing that we say always here, you know, we're 5% Catholic, we're in this part of the world. Well, that means that we have an opportunity to reach 95% of the population. They have not yet heard the good news of the Catholic Church and the gospel in the Catholic Church. And so we have a lot of opportunity to share that with others around us.
Yeah, and in your letter, you mentioned a number of saints as examples of being faithful evangelists who can help and guide us and assist us. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's good to know that we're not alone, of course. First of all, this is the mandate. The commission comes from Jesus Christ in Matthew 28, go and teach all nations. And we have a cloud of witnesses, what the letter to the Hebrews calls a cloud of witnesses in heaven, inspiring us, cheering us on, helping us, giving us a good example of how to do this today. You know, and so it's just, I mentioned several of those saints and those who are on the list, hopefully one day will be saints, to remind us that we're not alone. We're all in this together. And with the help of the saints, we are bound to succeed. There is no way we can fail.
Yeah, I love that. You know, not a lot of time left, but I want to talk about this, Something else you talked about in your pastoral letter was the so-called cancel culture, saying in part, we're condemned to exist in a world where everyone either agrees with us and is on our side or disagrees with us and thus are to be shunned. Talk to us quickly about the danger of that and how we can move forward.
You know, that's it. The moving forward is key because so many people are despairing these days. I've even had people say, Bishop, it seems that Satan is winning. You know, God has abandoned us. And I say immediately, of course, I'm going to stop you right there. Satan has lost. This ends in glory. But it is true. He is thrashing about. He is trying to bring us down, bring souls down with him. But we have the gospel. We have the sacraments. We have the church. And I don't mean to set aside all of those issues because they're very important and need to be addressed. But we can't define ourselves as Catholic or not Catholic just based on where we stand on a certain issue. We are Catholic. We are children of God because God has ordered it so. God has ordained it so. Through our baptism, we are children of God and we have equal dignity. And so it's just basically trying to get people to kind of get away from that negative thinking where it's just there's no hope. You know, people don't know what to believe anymore or who to follow. Well, it's the Catholic Church. It's not perfect, but if you keep your eyes on Christ, this ends in glory.
Well, this is a very hopeful discussion. Thank you so much for your time today, Your Excellency, and God bless you.
Thank you for having me. God bless you all.
Well, the Archbishop of San Francisco, Salvatore Cordileone, is asking Catholics to focus on, pray for, and find ways to support the homeless this year. Over the weekend, the Archbishop held a Requiem Mass for the homeless with sacred music by composer Frank LaRocca to depict life on the streets.
The whole message of this Mass, and that I tried to highlight in my homily, is that we're all children of God. We all have equal human dignity, and we have to see those who are struggling with homelessness not as a problem to be solved, but as a fellow human being. We walked afterwards to the Tenderloin, the kind of the poor and impoverished and crime-ridden neighborhood here in San Francisco, where the Franciscans operate a dining hall and provide many other wonderful services at St. Anthony's Foundation and also staff the parish there. It's a very beautiful day. I keep telling Frank LaRocca he's a genius because he can take my kind of outlandish ideas and actually realize them.
Up next, strive for sincerity, the Holy Father's message to the faithful. And special Mass, EWTN Germany receives a relic of St. Maximilian Kolbe. Pope Francis says that we are called to strive for sincerity.
Soffermiamoci su questo. Guardarsi dagli ipocriti.
At a Sunday address, the Holy Father underlined that we must watch out for those who live their faith with duplicity so as not to become like them. Pope Francis also warned how hypocrisy can be a dangerous illness of the soul. A special Mass helped to celebrate the 20th anniversary of EWTN Germany. Last Saturday, a Mass was held in Poland with a delegation from EWTN Germany who received a special gift from their Polish colleagues, a relic of St. Maximilian Kolbe. The gift celebrates 20 years of EWTN's evangelization in the German language. Joining us from Poland is Martin Rothweiler, director of EWTN Germany. Martin, great to see you. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Mass, and also why did EWTN Germany celebrate in Poland?
Sure. I mean, we were invited by our friends from Poland to celebrate the 20th year of EWTN in Germany, which we celebrated last year, and to do it this year in Poland. So there was a wonderful invitation from Father Piotr Wiśniowski, who is the spiritual director of EWTN in Poland, and he told me last year already that they want to give us a present, and the wonderful present would be the relic of Saint Maximilian Kolbe, which is a great saint here in Poland. And because of the pandemic, it was not possible. So he invited us now to Niebogadlanów, which is the place that Father Maximilian Kolbe founded. And yeah, it's a wonderful sign, and we're very grateful for this very special moment. And we are still extremely moved by this warm-hearted, symbolic, and profound gesture. When you think of the history of this place, and that was founded by Mother Maximilian Kolbe, and at the history of the relationship between Poland and Germany, I think that's just really moving and an important thing for us.
Absolutely. It really is incredible. Can you talk a little bit more about Maximilian Kolbe, why he's so important to so many, and also to you?
First of all, because he's a martyr who gave his life for a family father in the concentration camp in Auschwitz. He volunteered to go into the hunger bunker for him. He comforted and accompanied his fellow prisoners with prayer and songs, even into the death, until he himself was killed with a phenol syringe. This happened 80 years ago. No one has a greater love than who lays down his life for his friends, Jesus said. Father Maximilian Kolbe stands for this. All this reminds us and our Polish friends of the unspeakable suffering that millions of people endured in Auschwitz and other concentration camps. And the grandfather of Father Piotr Wiśniowski, the spiritual director of EWTN in Poland, spent 3 years in the concentration camp in Auschwitz and might have known even Saint Maximilian Kolbe in person. But he was tragically killed by a British bombardment short before the end of the war, so we don't know really. But I think in light of this historical background, I consider it a special grace that EWTN Poland and EWTN Germany are working so closely together. We do this because we know that all reconciliation and all healing can only come from Christ. And St. John Paul II, who canonized Maximilian Kolbe in 1982, called him a motor and patron of reconciliation. And we should not forget that St. Maximilian Kolbe is also the patron saint of journalists.
And can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that's something that a lot of people are unaware of.
As early as 1931, if you can imagine, Father Maximilian Kolbe is said to even have thought of using television technology, which was just in its infancy for evangelization. So I think there can be no better advocate for EWTN's media apostolate than Maximilian Kolbe, the patron saint of journalists. And indeed, I think one can safely say that he's the patron saint of all media workers. And we are going to use him especially for our media apostolate, for his intercession, as well as another great Polish saint of our time, St. John Paul II. And we now are happy to have the relics of both of these two powerful intercessors in our chapel of EWTN in Germany. And I think this is also a special link between EWTN in Germany and EWTN in Poland, if you want so.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. Martin, thank you so much for your time in speaking with us about all of this. Martin Rothweiler, director of EWTN Germany. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tracy.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.